Your soul as a leader matters, which is why I had the honor and privilege of having a conversation with Sonya Crosby, who's the group's pastor at Union Church, all about soul care and how we as leaders need to pursue and find freedom because our soul matters. The Bible says that what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? And so that's what we're talking about in this conversation. Now, before we get into the conversation, I want to let you know about a major project that we've been working on at Craft Your Dream for about the last 2 years or so. And the purpose of this project is for you to have the clarity you need to execute well and for you to have the confidence you need to stay consistent. And I want you to be in the know. And all you have to do is simply join the Craft Your Dream email list. Whether you download our Vision Builder Kit or you just go on our website and simply enter in your email, whatever it is, I want you to know about this major project that's dropping that can be a game changer for you. And I want to make sure that you have access to it. So join the email list so you can be in the know, enjoy this conversation, share it with one other person, and I pray that it blesses you. Well, I am so excited to be here with the Sonya Crosby. It is so good to have you on the show.
I am super excited to be here. Trev, I've been following you, and so it's just a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be on. I want to say something really quickly, something specifically about you. As I was thinking about you and just looking at just the work that you're doing, it reminded me of in Nehemiah. He was sent, he went to build the wall, to do the work, etc. And I believe it's like in verse 4, in chapter 4, it talks about how there were those who built with both hands. They were building with one hand and they had a weapon in the other. And it made me think about you, just really just the work that you're doing and in marketplace and also in ministry leadership. So thank you. I'm just super honored to be here and so excited about our conversation
Thank you.
today.
No, thank you so much. And Nehemiah is, as I'm growing in my biblical literacy and just
Yeah.
just diving into the world, Nehemiah is truly climbing fast up the ranks
Yes.
in like my favorite
Right.
books of the Bible.
That's great.
But no, I genuinely appreciate that because I know that I'm called to help people build, and
Yeah.
again, at least in leadership, as we're going to kind of dive into, you can't lead people to a place you haven't been.
That's right.
And so I'm really excited about our conversation just with what you do at Union,
Hmm.
but even outside of just your position and title, because that's nice. But I know that you have a real passion concerning people and their soul, because that's really
Yeah,
what we're talking about today.
absolutely.
Because Lord knows when God's given us a call, we immediately think, man, okay, the platform, the access, the this, the
For sure.
that.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get there if you don't have your soul in order. And so, in true just dream lifestyle podcast fashion, I want to start just so people really have an understanding of who you are. When did
Mhm.
you start building your dream lifestyle?
That's great question. And, I would say my parents started building it for me, right? And so I think sometimes we sort of disconnect from the fact that like, there was a foundation in which we're building on. And so that's something that I honestly believe and I know it. And so what did that look like for me? I mean, I was fortunate to grow up in a home where my parents were believers, my parents were pastors, but more than just being a pastors outside, they pastored us in our home. And so that meant definitely putting God first, pursuing the things of God, having a value centered life. And so I think that was helpful and to frame, right, like what does it look like for me to have impact, right, when I get to be an adult as I'm growing. And so the foundation started with them. Thank God the foundation started with them, because I was a mess growing up. I had a lot of pride. I still got some pride in me. I had a lot of pride. I was stubborn. I was all the things. But I specifically remember I was about 22 years old, and I wrote on a sticky note. And I wrote on a sticky note, my passion is to help people discover and walk into all that God has for them. And I put this sticky note at 22 in my wallet. And it started then. And so, what it looked like over the years, I believe that your dream is the destiny that God has for you. And oftentimes we focus on the vehicle and not the impact, right? And so, that statement that I created was actually the impact. the vehicle has changed over the years. And so, just professionally, I started off in higher education, loved it, really enjoyed it. And then eventually I transitioned into ministry. But so when did the dream start? With my parents, right? Just really being intentional on how they raised us and what they exposed us to. And then just me, myself, just opening up myself to try new things, right? To explore, to be interested, to look at the patterns in my life and see, okay, God, you're sort of shifting me and directing me into this way. And I will still say now it's still unfolding, right? I say all the time, and I joke with my colleagues, but we're serious. We always say we're living the dream. I'm absolutely, I'm living the dream. Yeah.
I love that. And I think I want to go back to a couple of things you said. Number one, you're a PK. So you're telling me you're a PK that didn't fly off the rails? My.
Well, yeah, I did. I
Well,
did. Is
you know,
that what we? I
it's so
didn't
funny
come.
because the reason why I bring that up, I joke about it, is because I think so often, obviously, as a PK myself,
Yeah,
that stereotype, I don't think it's as radical as people think it is. Like,
absolutely.
not
That's
saying
right.
it doesn't exist, not saying it doesn't happen, but
That's
I
right.
think there's more PKs still doing the right thing and like at least back
Yes.
aligned with that foundation
Yes.
than
That's
there's
right.
not. So
Then
I just
there's
wanted
that.
to joke about
Yes.
that for a second.
Yes.
But
For
you
sure.
said
For
that
sure.
you said at 22, you came up with, we'll call it a passion statement to
Yeah.
help people discover all that God has for them. How did
Yeah.
how did you at 22 kind of
Yeah.
just put that in a statement? Because at 22,
I
you don't
know.
even think about a job, a career.
Right.
Like what what
So
led you
so
to even
I
like explore that?
Yeah, so honestly, part of it came out of some disappointment. And so, like, let me talk a little bit about the disappointment. You know, most folks, when they go to college, I say, they are like dropping it like it was hot. That was not me. I was dropping to my knees. Like, I served, I prayed, I served the Lord. And then once I graduated, like, I wanted my dream job. And I just knew I was going to get it, and I didn't get it. And so then I became disappointed, like, God, you owe me something, like it's the job. And I think it was in that moment I sort of call that season of just being in a crucible, that season of like God like really showing me like, hey, are you gonna live for me or not? And it was just through that season that, I just started to look at patterns in my life, and I'm like, man, I really do. I want to help people. Like it, I grew up, and this is probably part of being a PK, but I grew up in a community and where there were a lot of people were without hope. And I remember one day I was just walking in my neighborhood, and I just saw other people just walking like in transit, and I'm like, they have no hope. Like, man, I want people to know the hope of God, not just the hope of God, but why they were created, and then to experience that. And so again, I think it started out of some disappointment, out of some pain, and for the Lord really shaking me up, like, hey, I need you to get out of yourself and stop looking at the position and more so look at the impact. And so that's really, how it came to be. And then I say I did that for 20 years in higher ed. And now I actually celebrated 5 years in ministry 2 weeks ago. And so now I'm doing that in ministry, but it's just who I am. Like Trev, similar to you, you're like, I just want to help people. Right. I said, I just want to help people. I'm definitely main character energy person. And the Lord had to remind me, like, no, you're going to be a great supporting actor to some people, right? To some dreams, and really helping people, walk out the destiny God has for them. Yeah.
I love that. I think one of the things that I've discovered that I know you would agree with is that we are impact focused, but we do it in our own way, right? You talked about the vehicle has changed. And I know for you, with the work that you do with groups and things like that, through the vehicle, right? Through the vehicle of Groups Pastor, but you focus a lot on freedom,
That's right.
personal freedom, right? Soul care and all the like. Can you tell me just in terms of why that is important for us as leaders? Like when we think
Yeah.
about, especially ministry leaders, like
Yep.
God gave us a call. We know that there's greatness. We know the promise. For I know the plans that I have for you, a
Yeah.
hope in the future, all the things.
Yeah.
Talk with us about why personal freedom, because I know that is like a passion of yours to help people find that hope. Where,
Absolutely.
again, I want to make sure so people understand why I'm asking.
Hmm.
When God calls us, it's easy to think of, okay, here's all the things I got to start doing. Here's all the things I got to add.
That's
But
right.
with the work that you do and what I know you're passionate with, it's like, hey, before we get to adding, let's look at what needs to be
For
subtracted.
sure.
Let's look at
That's
what you
right.
need to get rid
So
of
good.
and
That's right.
everything. And you said earlier about, man, through this disappointing season, I found pride and like God's
Yeah.
working with me in that. Like, why
Yeah.
is personal freedom so important for us as leaders?
It's really good. It's yes, so freedom is, is really my passion to help people find freedom. And um I think about in Isaiah 40:31, we know the verse, like those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles, dot dot dot, right?
Hmm.
So there's before we run, before we soar, right? There's some digging that has to happen. Before we ascend, we have to dig deep. Before we ascend high, we have to dig deep. I love that verse in Isaiah, and I don't think it's coincidence that um the author used an eagle. And so as I was studying that verse, I'm like, why an eagle? What is it about an eagle? And as I began to study the verse about the eagle, in the morning for 30 minutes, the eagle looks to the sun, the sun. And as he's looking to the sun, she is looking to the sun, their eyes begin to water. And as their eyes water, it actually cleans off the breast, their feathers. And that is what causes them to soar because it's cleaning off the debris, right? It's cleaning off the dust. It's cleaning off. So, what does that mean for us as ministry leaders, as just people? If we are not looking to the sun, the SON, right? And so that he can clean off our hearts, what the disappointment, the pride, whatever it is, we're just not going to be able to soar in life, right? And so, when that happens, then the eagle soars. Right, then we can run and then we won't faint. Right, and so why is personal freedom important? Without it, you're not going to soar in life. Without it, you're not going to become who God has called you to do. Without it, you're not going to walk into the full destiny that God has for you. So that's why personal freedom is important as ministry leaders, as people. Ministry leaders, specifically, I will say that, and some people don't like to hear this, right? But God is more concerned about who you become than what. He's concerned about the who. He is still in the, come on, I'm gonna give a church word here. He is still in the sanctification process. He's still in the, I'm returning for a bride without spot or ring. Like, let's not lose sight of the work that he wants to do us. He wants us the character so that we look like Christ. Like, let's not lose sight of that. And so that's why personal freedom is just absolutely important for us as people, as ministry leaders.
Well, that I had not heard that illustration and analogy of the eagle looking to the
Yeah.
sun and the cleanse. I was like, I grew up non-denominational. My dad was AME, so I don't know. I'm not clear on like but I almost had a Baptist fit when you were saying that because I'm like, oh
Right.
snap, that's so good,
Yeah.
that's so
Isn't it good?
good.
Isn't it good
Um,
when yeah, it's
you
yeah.
you said something at the beginning of your answer. You said before we ascend high, we must dig deep, and how God is more concerned about who we are than what we become, all the things.
Yeah.
Let's get tactical here because
Great.
you spoke to the importance. Now let's speak to just like where a leader starts, and I think it starts with self assessment because that's at least how I'm
Yes.
hearing. Where it's like, hey, before I solve a problem, I got to first even know what the problem is. I got to
Yeah.
figure out, okay, what's there, what needs to get cleansed off of me. How
Yeah.
do we as leaders, how do we properly self assess in a way so we can get free?
That's good. That's good. I like to call them things that happen to I like to call them ouch moments, right? And so what does that mean? That means when something happens, when something is said, and you're just like, "Ooh, that just rubbed me the wrong way." So the first question is, okay, why? Why did that rub you the wrong way? Right? Like there's something that there's some tension with your heart, right, with your soul. Right? We know the soul is our mind, our will, our emotions. Like, there's some tension that happened there when something happened or when something didn't happen, when something was said or when something wasn't said, right? And so I think that's where we start. That's where we identify, like, okay, there's something, something here. And I can give a personal story. Can I share a personal story? Let me give a personal story. I mentioned that I've been in ministry now for 5 years. And so when I started in ministry, I was probably a good 6 weeks in. And I'm the group's pastor. I was working on this amazing summer launch plan, the marketing. I worked with the marketing folks, the creative folks. We had this plan together. It was absolutely great. We were launching in 2.5 weeks. And so my leader was out on leave, and when she returned, she was reviewing everything, and so she called me into her office and she said, "Hey Sonya, I'm reviewing the summer launch plan," and she was like, "It's not going to work." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean? It's great." "Nope, we're good. We're good to go. The creative, the marketing, we're doing this, we're doing that. Like, it's fantastic." And she said, "No, it's not going to work." And she said, "This is boring. No one is going to want to join a group. This is boring. And so we need to start all over again." And I'm like, 3 weeks? We launch in 3 weeks? And so I went back to my office and I was frustrated, to say the least, but I was, a better word for it, I was deflated. That was the moment that I could have been like, okay, I'm feeling something, I'm sensing something, right? And so she knew, she followed back up with me probably within the hour. And now I'm getting real personal. So she called me and I saw that she was calling me and I've refused to answer. It's another sign. It's another sign. Not repent. I'm refusing to answer. So I was like, I'm not answering because I was just so heated. And so she texted, Sonya. And as soon as I picked it up, I was about to respond. And the Holy Spirit said to me, "What you're doing is not rocket science. I'm going to burn that pride out of you." So in the moment, I felt a tension. I felt this emotion. I felt this feeling. And, the Holy Spirit was so gracious and kind to me, right? He didn't let me figure it out on my own. But in that moment, he's like, "No, there's something in you that I'm trying to burn out of you." I think oftentimes when we are building the dream that God has for us or we're living the dream, we are more focused on the thing, right? And it's like, wait a minute. Like, God wants to do something in us, right? He wants to do something in us. So again, I think, how do you know? How do you self-assess? What are those ouch moments? What are those things that you're like, "Oh, this is so frustrating. This is so aggravating." And, lean into the Holy Spirit, lean into community, right? It's really important that you have community. You have people in your life who can point out your blind spots. You have people in your life where you can share things and they're like, "Yeah, that's not going to work."
Yeah.
The good news and the bad news, I don't know. The good news is that we are all broken. We live in a broken world. We are all broken. So we all have hard work to do, right? And there's generally something that, started earlier on, right? In life where, something happened. There was some type of trauma happened. There was some type of lie that the enemy began to feed you. And there's just wounds that we just need to clean out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's so
self-assessment.
good.
Yeah. Very
That's so
important.
good. I think one of the things that you mentioned, and you went over it quick now, one, I appreciate that story because that does paint a clear picture for us as leaders of like what that actually feels like, those ouch
Yeah.
moments you said, like
Mhm.
in real time.
Yeah.
Because as high performers, we usually put ourselves last on
Right.
the back burner. We're usually like, hey, we're usually like a D on the disc assessment. We're usually like, hey,
Yeah.
let's just get the job
Yeah.
done. We'll deal with all that
Right.
feelings and all that stuff later.
Yeah.
But your story really illustrates like, okay, one, really labeling what this is, and just how
Yeah.
you said, allowing the Holy Spirit to speak into, no, I'm going to burn that pride out of you, which I think is just, I mean, that's sobering. But you said
Right.
something that I think is I want to touch on. You
Yeah.
said when you initially felt the ouch moment, you labeled it frustration, but then you came to really identify it as being deflated.
Mhm.
I want to lean into that a little bit for a second because
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think so often we can almost settle for a label. Like once we as leaders are, we're just like, okay, I was angry. All right, cool, moving forward. But
Mhm.
the reality is, no, you were actually disappointed.
Yeah.
No, you were actually deflated. Like, because in my mind, those are two very different things. Like you would
Yes.
respond to those two different things. Can you just speak into that of just like, hey, let's not go for these like surface level, things of like, oh, I'm angry, oh, I'm sad. It's like, no, let's actually like get underneath that. Can you speak into that?
Yeah, that's really good. I think I'm certainly not an expert on, I guess emotions that are, what do they say, sort of like the top emotions, and there's emotions underneath,
Yeah.
et cetera,
I
et
think
cetera.
there's like
Yeah,
a whole wheel diagram
right.
or something, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm not an expert on that, but what I know is there is when I think about the soul, your mind, your will, your emotions, I'm always thinking through like, okay, where is this sort of hitting me? Right? Like my emotions, my will, right? And so we think about, well, I think about your ambitions, right? Like, okay, how is this impacted me in those particular areas. And so I think me being frustrated, right? So the frustration, like that's sort of tied to, this is me being transparent, my ambition. I'm a very ambitious person. I don't get what I want, right? And so like I'm going to lean more towards like that's my will, right? I'm frustrated, right? Like there's this tension because I didn't get what I want, but it's like, no, Sonya, lean into the emotion. How are you feeling emotionally? Like, how is it, emotions is the Greek word emovre. It means to move from, to movement, right? Either I'm moving, my emotions are going to cause me to move towards God or to move away from God. So in this emotion, like this being deflated, like, no, God has called me to be more than a conqueror, right? God has called me to be like, no, Christ is in me. I'm a conqueror, but I'm feeling deflated. So I'm like, that's an emotion. Like, it's not who God has called me to be. So I think that's how I sort of wrestle it. I happen to be sort of in tune with emotions type of person anyway, but um usually your first initial feeling is not the feeling, the emotion. The first initial thing is like, okay, I gotta dig a little deeper, right? The initial one probably is not the one. Like, hey, let's sit with it and let's dig a little deeper. I was hurt, you know what I mean? So hurt, I was deflated, I was hurt. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I appreciate about what you just said was that, and then what I found in my own experience, right? When I go deeper than the initial emotion, whatever I label it as, okay, I was frustrated, but really I was disappointed. Oh, I'm frustrated, but really, I feel abandoned, whatever.
Yeah.
You end up praying more effective prayers as a
That's
result.
right.
So
That's right.
it's like if I just leave it at the surface level emotion of
Yeah.
sadness, if I bring my sadness to God, yes, He can deal with it, but that's not
Yeah.
actually the thing. Like
That's
that's
right.
not
That's right.
what's really there. And so
That's
I
right.
think for dreamers out there who they're praying to God and all the things, like, and this honestly even ties up to what you said earlier. Whatever it is that God has called us to is going
Hmm.
to require us to be pruned. It's going to require us to be
Hmm.
developed and grow and all the things, and that means we're going to run into
Yeah.
insecurities. We're going to run into
Yes.
voids and all the things, and they're
Mhm.
all going to be things that we didn't even know were there. Like
Yeah.
one of the things that I say a lot to whether it's clients, whatever, I always say like you are the last to know who you are. Like you are the
That's
last to
good.
know. Like
Yeah,
God
that's
knows who you
good.
are, the devil
That's
knows who
good.
you are, the people
Yeah,
around you will know who you
that's
really are.
good.
You just the last
Yeah,
to know. And so
that's
we're
right. That's
as
good.
we are growing and stepping into new spaces and by faith and all things, yeah, you're going to run into fear you didn't know you had just because you were never in that position. You're going to run into, disappointments that you never thought you'd be disappointed about because you have different type of responsibilities and all the things. And so I think that's why just this idea of soul care, like I'm pointing this out because I want leaders as they think about whatever it is they're building,
Yeah,
where you kind of do have to referencing Nehemiah, it's hey, it's sword and it's hammer. It's
that's
like,
right.
hey, you're
That's right.
fighting on both fronts, but that's normal.
Yeah,
Where you
that's
got to
normal.
create space to where you
Yeah,
can actually wrestle through some of these things. Now you mentioned community earlier, and I
yeah,
want to really like spend a good amount of time there because I think for us as leaders, particularly those of us who are high performing, high achieving, high capacity, all the things, we struggle with this.
yeah.
So how does a leader who has a lot of responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
is the strong friend, like
Mm-hmm.
how do we effectively build that community so we can actually get free and take care of our souls?
That's great. That's great. I think when we think about community and we think about that being an add-on and not the first thing, right? Like anyone who has done anything great, they've had someone there. I mean, come on, Jesus. You know what I mean? Like he had the disciples like in ministry. Come on, if Jesus was in community, we got to be in it's
So
not
true.
gonna it's just not gonna happen. And so I think that, and it's unfortunate, my heart goes out. I know that people have had bad experiences in relationships. That's actually, it's actually a scheme of the enemy, right? Especially if you are a builder, especially if you are a dreamer, especially if God has given you a vision, something to come, you're supposed to build. you may have had some challenges with community, right? With relationships in the past. That's just how the enemy works. Oftentimes I say, like, he has no new tricks. You know what I mean? It's like, I see exactly what you're trying to do. And so for me, community, like, that's the first thing. That's number one. That's priority. How do we practically, make time for it? I think there are definitely spaces, depending on sort of what your faith community looks like. So for us, we have groups, right? So it's intentionality, and it's getting a community with individuals who have similar interests, right? So there may be community for those who are entrepreneurship. There's community for entrepreneurs. There's community for those who, enjoy certain hobbies or activities, right? And so that community is absolutely important. Making room for it, making time for it. It's not, I think we first have to renew our mind to the fact that, like, it's not optional. Ecclesiastes talks about two are better than one, for you have a greater return for your labor. When you fall, not if you fall, but when you fall, there's someone there to help you and someone there who's going to pick you up. And so I think we begin to renew our mind to the fact that community is not an add-on. It's something that's like, it's the beginning, right? It's the beginning. Romans, talks about the renewing of our mind and the importance of renewing our mind. And depending on the level at which we renew our mind determines if we're going to experience God's good, pleasing, or perfect will, right? Some of us, we are going to build what God has told us to build, and maybe it's only going to be good because we refuse to, like, really lean into the community and accept, the promise or the principle that two's better than one. I need to get into community, right? James 5:16, I need to confess my faults, my heart, things that are happening with one another, with someone else, so that I may be healed,
Be healed. Yeah.
right? And so that's the importance. It's just the importance of community. Like, we eat, right? We work out, we have a regimen, right? And so what I even do for myself, there are certain seasons where community may look a little bit different. There are certain seasons where I'm in a group, I'm intently, like, I'm in a group. There are certain seasons where I'm like, man, in this season, this is something I'm trying to build. So let me connect with individuals that I know who are building the same thing. They probably have the same type of crazy schedule, but there's some time that we can find with one another. Getting into community, if it's like, hey, I gotta eat, you gotta eat, let's eat together, right? Our families got to eat, your family got to eat, let's come together, right? Even as a family. And that is, fostering and building community.
That's so good. I think what I really appreciate is, so I've been in that journey probably about the last 2 years or so. Because I'm just used to, being the strong friend, strong friend. I'm used to,
Yeah.
all right, you're gonna ask me to do something. You're hitting me up, asking me how are you doing, when really this is just a front. So just like, what do you want? What do you need from me, right?
Yeah.
But you're right in the lens of, at least what helped me with what you described was recognizing it is a kingdom principle to be in community.
That's right.
Like you
Yeah,
said, right? It's a non-negotiable. Like,
that's right.
you can have your trust issues, bad experiences, whatever the case is. That still does not disqualify you as a leader to not have community.
That's right. That's
Like,
right. Yep. Right.
and so I've been walking that out. And to your point, what helped me a lot is, it helped me realize there really is no excuse to not, in some way, shape, or form, engage with community. Because I do think the reality is, people are busy, leaders are busy for sure,
hmm
but there's voice notes, but there's
Yeah.
Zoom calls, but
Yeah.
like you said, you got to eat at some point. So, like, let's figure out how we can make it happen. Like, there's a multitude of ways now
Yep.
that we as human beings can
That's
connect
right.
with one another. And
That's right.
so I think it is important to what you're saying of, like, valuing the principle. Hey, I need to be in community just because, hey, two are better than one. One can chase 1,000, two can chase 10,000 flight. That's exponential growth. Like, I will advance exponentially if I am in community.
Yeah.
One of the things that I encountered, and I
hmm
pushed through it, but I'm sure that other leaders listening have encountered this, when they are doing what you're saying. I'm engaging with community. I go to the networking event. I join a group in my church. I invite people over to my house, whatever the case is. And it's time to have real conversation.
hmm
Because, again, at least the way I describe it, Sonya, is we just gonna be kiki friends, or we gonna
Right.
be real friends. Like, what are we
Right.
talking about here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
usually am on the side of we don't have time to talk about this. Like, what's up?
Yeah.
What's going on,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Right.
How
Yeah.
how can we? What would you say to a leader? I'll ask it like this: What would you say to a leader who is in the situation where it's time for them to be vulnerable? Like the keyword vulnerable, not transparent, vulnerable.
Yeah.
Where it's time for them to be vulnerable, and that thought of like, what are they going to think, and all the
Hmm.
things. What would you say to that leader who's navigating with that mental block of like, this is my opportunity to say that I'm disappointed. This is my opportunity to say what's holding me up,
Yep.
but I don't know. What would
Yeah.
you say to that leader?
That's good. And so the first thing that I would say is it's an ouch moment. So first of all, if I'm in relationship with someone and I am not able to be vulnerable, right? Then it's like, okay, why? Let's talk about that. You know what I mean? Like, what is it fear of rejection? Like, what is it? Right? Is it something that, we're we're hiding, like, what is it, what's happening there, right? And so first of all, it's an ouch moment, so it's something that's like, okay, I need to go back to this. If I'm in the moment, something that I do, and I for years was, the friend who everybody came to, right? And did not feel like I had a lot of people that I could go to and receive the same type of, just support, care, etc. um we underestimate prayer. Like, Dr. Youngi Cho in his book, the Fourth Dimension, he said, anything that God calls us to do, it's going to come through our faith. So that's relationships, right? And I think sometimes we may see people, we may get engaged in relationships, and we're like, okay, this is it, this is my moment. But we also have to use wisdom. Like, God, who specifically have you called me to, and who am I called? You know what I mean? Like, specifically, like, who is the person? What is the relationship, right? And so again, it's important that we have kiki relationships and we have dig deep relationships, and we have to know who, and we have to know what, right? That's so very important, and I think we get them crisscrossed, right? And so sometimes we are going to be vulnerable with kiki relationships, and then something happens and we're like, see, that's what I did. I was vulnerable. I opened up. This is what I'm talking about. That's why I don't do people. That's why I don't do friends. And it's like, wait a minute. Let's take some responsibility here, and let's just use some wisdom and the type of people, that we are going to be open and we're going to be vulnerable with. And so, um, be wise. Let's use some wisdom, right? Let's use some wisdom. Um, but ultimately pray for, divine connections. Pray, that's one of the things that I pray for all the time and daily. That's just a
Yeah,
part of the, blessing my food, we praying for divine connections. Like, that's just a part of the prayer, and
that's
knowing
so good.
that, God has called you to build something. The enemy is trying to oppose you, and so
Yeah,
relationships is going to be an area where he's not going to, just lay down easily. Yeah.
that's so good. I really appreciate that because it really is as simple as praying about it, right? I think we can often think in our prayer time. I'll say it like this: we almost like overcomplicate prayer, where
Yeah.
we think prayer is deep. It is. So yes, really search my heart, Lord, for all the things. But it also can just be, God, show me the people.
That's right. That's
Send
that's
me the
right.
people.
That's right.
Like, just God,
That's
I
right.
need you to show me who I can be vulnerable with, who you want me to be. And again, I
Yeah.
think it even goes back to, hey, because I want to follow this principle of community, if we
Yeah.
wanted to put it like that, right? Because I want to, God,
Yeah.
show me,
That's right.
right? Like, I think one of the phrases that I always heard growing up, at least in church, was God always sends the right people at the right time.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and it's like within that, it's like, okay, well, if I'm not seeing the right people, if they aren't presenting themselves, then
Yeah.
they're there, right? And that even becomes a measure of faith to the quote that you just quoted, right? It's like, hey, they're out there. My people are out there.
Yeah.
So, God, I need you to open my eyes to
Yeah.
them so that I can execute and use wisdom. I think, that wisdom piece in the being transparent, being vulnerable is something that's not talked about as much as it should
Yeah.
concerning being in community, because yes, you can't share everything with everybody,
That's right.
but you got to check and see. what would you say can be some? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot with this. What can be some like guiding principles to like exercise wisdom? So like, because again, we can understand use wisdom, right?
Right.
What can that look like? So meaning like, do we look at the other person's position in life? Do we look at the way they make decisions? Like, what would you say can be some like, hey, check under the hood with different people? Like, can you
That's
give us
great.
some
Yeah,
tactical what that
that's
means to kind of operate
great.
with wisdom?
Yeah, that's great. Fruit doesn't lie, right? Fruit is evident, right? Fruit, like, what's the fruit that they are producing in their life? What fruit do I see from afar, and even as I get closer, do I see fruit? And fruit determines the area or the level at which I'm going to be vulnerable, right? And so here, what are some of the fruit that I look for? How people treat people, how people treat people that can't do anything for them, right? Like, so I'm looking at some fruit, right? Like, how do you treat people? What have you sort of wrestled in your own life, right? And I think now there's people are pretty open, you know what I mean? Like, have you wrestled anything in your own life, right? So there are certain fruit that I'm looking for in an individual to determine, is this a person who I can be vulnerable with? Now, here's the other thing, and we think that relationships are all soft and fuzzy and cozy, right? When you think about King Saul and David, but I'm telling you something, Saul David was developed. You know what I'm saying, right? And
My
so
God.
I think oftentimes, even in relation, we're just like, oh my goodness, like, nope, that person is this and that person is that. And it's like, wait a minute now, have boundaries. Don't be abused. Like, that's very important. But at the same time, it's like, how can this person develop me? It may not even feel good. It may rub up against, an area of freedom that I need, which is even better, right? So that is really important. So what do I mean by wisdom? I'm looking at fruit. Like, I'm looking at fruit. I'm looking at how do you treat people, specifically people who can't do anything for you, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I'm looking at a fruit. Like, what have you walked through? When I'm talking about fruit, I'm also talking about the fruit of the spirit, right? Is there a joy about you? Is there just a peace about you? Is there a love about you, right? Those are the
Yes.
individuals that I'm going to be more, that I'm going to be like, okay, I desire to have them closer in my life and to help me as I'm walking out this freedom journey.
I love that. I think one of my guiding kind of filters, right, is fruit. For me, I also pay attention to people's obedience to God.
Yes,
So
yeah,
like if you
yeah,
need 8 months to be obedient to something that
that's
should
right.
take you one day, hey man, that
Right.
kind of puts a limit. Because if you can't
Yeah,
obey God, there's no way we'll have a good
that's
friendship.
right. That's
And I know
absolutely
that
right.
might be a little rigid on my part, but I pay
Yeah,
attention to that. Like
that's
again, it's
important.
we're not, and I'm talking about like the normal things, like when God says, "Hey, you need to read your Bible more in this season." Like, do you
Yes.
drag your feet on that? Is
Right.
that do you drag your feet on those
Right.
types of requests? Not like
Yeah.
the God told me to sell everything and move. Like, yeah, you can take your
Right.
time with that, but like the
That's right.
requests where it's kind of like, why is it taking you that long to do that?
Exactly. For
Like,
sure.
wait,
For
what are you?
sure. Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
Sonya, what I want to ask you, and this just came to my mind, so track with me. Can you speak into the correlation and connection between a person's freedom and their, we'll call it, professional progress? Can
Hmm.
can you speak into that of whether it's a level of fulfillment, whether it's a level of achievement? Because again, I want people to, as they listen to this, really understand we're not talking about soul care just for the sake of you feel good,
Yeah.
but like, can you just speak to kind of like that connection between, hey, the freer I got, the more productive I became. The freer I got when I really put that pride aside, when I really,
Yeah.
allowed God to fill in the void of that insecurity, like I found myself approaching like can you speak into that, like that
Yeah.
correlation and connection for us?
Yeah. That's good. Um, so I think about Saul, I think about King Saul, and I think about when he was, first of all, when he was called, when the prophet came to him, and his first response was like, not me, like I'm little, like no, right? It's this
Yeah.
insecurity, right? And then when he went back to, yeah, I believe it was his uncle, and he was like, hey, did you, yeah, we found him, and he refused to tell his uncle he was called, right? So we see a little bit of people pleasing there, right? We see some insecurity. And then at his coronation, they say Saul was hiding amongst the baggage, right? Like,
Yes.
and so we can even break down like what baggage for what. Well, just look at a few chapters, and when he was early, like he didn't see himself in a certain way. He had some people pleasing. We know throughout his whole entire rule, like he was more concerned with people pleasing. That's pride. That's a preoccupation with self. I'm more concerned about what others think than what God thinks, right? And so
Yes.
this freedom is not living in freedom, not being free. It's heavy. It's baggage. You cannot, when I'm carrying heavy bags in the airport, it slows me down, first of all. It just slows me down. When I'm not free, my professional progress, it's going to slow me down, right? Like the Lord may say, hey, you you may be like, oh, I did it. And he may be like, actually, you were supposed to do it in 6 months, not in 9 months. But okay, so baggage, it's going to slow me down, right? There's going to get to a point where it's just going to be too much and I can't carry it to the next thing. And I think that is what really is sad, because sometimes we don't even know if there will be a next, right? We think like, oh, this is it. This is the end of it. And the Lord could be like, no. Because if you would have dealt with, the baggage, if you would have dealt with that insecurity, then you could have gone far. The impact could have been greater, right? We see like this, God sees like this. The impact could be so much greater, right? And so when we're in the moment, when we're living it, what we see as professional progress, it could be that the Lord's like, there was so much more.
Yeah.
You,
Oh my
there was
God,
just
that's
so much
good.
more. You know what I
That
mean?
is good.
Like,
Yeah.
and yeah, there is so much more. So, um, and I when I as I walk in more freedom, let me first tell you this: it doesn't feel good, right? As early
Does
as
it?
last week, last week there was some ouch moments, and I was wrestling with the Lord, and this is right before I had to minister, and in the midst of it, we were in revival for 3 days, and so in the midst of being in revival, I was wrestling. Like I'm telling you, it did not feel good. But at the same time, it felt good because I'm like, man, God, like at least like you're wrestling. Like I hear you. Like I'm leaning in. And so basically, sometimes the progress, the professional progress that we see, there it could be greater. There's greater,
That's
right?
good.
If we are in tune with freedom and really persistent in pursuing freedom.
That's good. I really like that. So you're pretty much saying, if you stay in bondage, it robs you of speed, but it also robs you of impact potentially, where you could still achieve, but it could have been greater. You might have achieved, but you might have achieved it 3 months earlier had you gotten free and everything. I like that. And as we kind of turn the corner, and that kind of transitions us well into this last question for
Mhm,
you, Sonia, with everything you've experienced, the freedom that you have attained and that you continue to strive
mhm,
for. What does it cost to be you?
mhm. Yeah, that's the I like what you said, the freedom that we continue to strive for. Freedom is a journey, right? And so it's not like, okay, I'm done. No, it's a journey, right? Like until he returns, we will become until he returns, right? And so I think what that cost me, first of all, it's to be me, understanding that and it starts with my mind, understanding that I'm on this journey of freedom, understanding that when I think I have achieved, I need to remind myself I have not achieved. Understanding that, like, how much can I really decrease? Like, like when I think I have decreased as much as I can so God can increase, He's like, no, there's more. There's more and there's more. And so it has cost me just a level of surrender that I didn't think. Was even like possible. It has cost me just personally. Um, I don't want to get too dark, but it has cost me just so there's an area of our life that the enemy always wants to attack. Usually we'll see it in generations, like we'll see something. And so for me, it has sort of been in the area of health, like crazy diagnoses that's like doctors like I don't can't even imagine. I don't even know. This is, you're one in like, 500,000, like, stuff like that. So it's cost me just a level of just like, just spiritual warfare that, I think as when you're in ministry leadership, that's just something that's going to come. But it has been, it cost me in a very great way to lay down a life I thought I wanted, and I'm living a much better life. Oh my gosh. When I tell you there's more joy, there's more peace, right? There's happiness, there's happy. We talk a lot about joy, but there's happiness too, right? There's it's good. It's definitely it's a life that's good. And so if you lay down your life, you know what I mean? Those like you'll gain a much better one in this
Yeah.
present day. You know what I mean? In this present day. And that's something that that I'm absolutely living and so grateful for. And so yeah. I
I
hope I
appreciate that.
I
No,
hope I answered that.
1000%. And the reason why I always like asking that question is because, with the level of influence that you have, because, we've been we haven't gotten too much into like your role as a groups pastor, but it ain't like you just like groups pastor. Oh, we got like, two groups over here. One group. Oh, y'all got groups the size of people's churches. So like,
Right?
you're a high level leader. And I think what I really want people to understand is that, the people that you look to in leadership, they go through things that are unseen. They make sacrifices that will probably never be documented, shared about, talked about on a podcast, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
Um, and it's important because I think even that becomes a measure of freedom. And so I thank you for
Mhm.
paying that price. The
Mhm.
people that I know you pastor, I know that they are thankful that you pay that price, even while they may not know you're paying it. Because as you said, right, freedom is a journey. And that means we have to continue to be willing. We have to continue to surrender, to just stay in position, right? Because ultimately, this life is not about us. It's about the impact that we want to make. And so everything that we talked about today, soul care, finding freedom, those ouch moments, um, I believe is really going to help somebody. I believe
Great.
really going to help somebody
Yeah.
just, again, focus on how to get ahead, but it's just going to get done differently than you thought,
Yeah.
right? Where
That's
where it's, hey, instead of me putting together a strategic plan, I need to really just get a notebook and journal like a couple of the last 5 ouch moments I had within the last
that's
week,
right.
right? Like
Yeah.
it's all for the same purpose and goal where it's, hey, like I want to make an impact. It just looks very different where I'm getting free instead of, trying to pursue. So
Yeah.
I just thank you. I thank you for that. That was so good. That was so,
Great.
so good.
Great.
Um, well, listen, if you are watching this video, listening to it on podcast, whatever the case is, if this blessed you, if this provided value to your life in any way, shape, or form, the only request I have of you is that you send it to one person to be a blessing, because in the same way it blessed you, you can be a blessing to somebody else.
That's
So
right.
stay tuned to the next episode. Always remember, your dream is possible as long as you're willing to grow for it. We'll see you on the next
That's
episode. Have a good one. Take
that's
care.
great.